I have a problem with the debate over Israel's democracy. And it's not a problem with the moral principles of any side, but with the fact that it's taking place without any real theory of Israeli democracy, of where Israeli democracy comes from. And my view is that we have to understand that Israel, it's sometimes hard to understand this in the English language debate about Israel, is actually an exotic entity that is not quite fit the categories that the English language debate has for Israel. Where does Israeli democracy come from is, I think, fundamental to any serious attempt to grapple with where it's going. And of course, it's fundamental to the ability to build any strategy that is meant to move it in one way or another, whether you're on the right or the left or the far right or the far left. Israeli democracy doesn't quite come from anywhere that is explainable in Anglo-Saxon terms. In other words, the Americans
Try us.
Right. So the Americans had this, Philadelphia Convention. They had Federalist Number 10, Alexander Hamilton. They had this deep philosophical, theoretical, profound debate about how you make sure that you curb political power. Power corrupts. Human beings are immoral. You have to build a political system that assumes they're immoral if you're going to keep them moral. If you build a political system that assumes they're all going to be nice all the time, it's going to collapse. That kind of a debate took place in America. It never took place in Israel. We don't have, in America, every single institution of government is elected by a different cross-section of the population. So that even if you have a majority in states that take over the Senate, you don't have a majority in states because states don't elect the House. We don't have that. We don't know where our democracy comes from. And what I try to suggest is that our democracy comes from the needs of Jewish survival and solidarity. It comes from an ethos of Jewish mutual responsibility, ethnocentrism. This can be, you can say it in nice words or in not nice words. I'm not arguing it's a good thing. I'm arguing it's true, and therefore Israeli democracy is essentially serves the needs of this Jewish polity, of this Jewish collectivism, of Jewish nationalism.
So Naomi, before you respond, on an almost musical level, on an emotional level, when you hear the term solidarity, does this bother you, or is it a positive concept for you?
Solidarity is an essential part of any society. And as somebody who was born and brought up in Jerusalem and still lives here, unlike many of my schoolmates from elementary school, solidarity is a word we grew up with as social responsibility, and yes, national responsibility. It doesn't scare me at all. What worries me tremendously is, in broad strokes, what I call democratic recession, what's been going on in this country for the past decade, is frankly, for anybody who cares about the future existence of the state of Israel, a critical issue. This is not something that's, incidental. Israeli democracy is an essential element, if not the most important element, in the survival of the state of Israel, which, as we know, contains a very, very diverse population. So this is an existential conversation. It's not incidental. And that's why I was so concerned with Haviv's article, which, by the way, is a very intriguing article because it falls into pitfalls that allow people to go along with something that they don't agree with. Now, the roots of democracy, by the way, in Britain are very different than they are in the United States. And if there was a Francophile here, they would claim that they're the cradle, and that's very different. And there are new democracies in Germany in the post-war era. I've studied democracies throughout the Third World, and each one has their roots in social contracts which are specific to the culture and history of those involved. And the genius of the founders of the State of Israel is that they understood that Israel, as the homeland for the Jewish people, has to be the state of all its citizens, without prejudice on the basis of national origin, religion, gender, and I can continue. It's written into the Declaration of Independence. And therefore, just one last sentence on this, to equate Israeli democracy with Jewish nationalism is to demean it and to weaken the state of Israel.